assignments, doubts, exams. We have got you back. EduPlanner make every chapter easy to understand. Stay tuned, learn more, grow with us.
In this example, we have a patient here inside an MRI machine. And basically, what's going on is there's a strong magnetic field inside the chamber of this machine while this person's getting imaged in there. And when we turn the machine off, we're going to go from a situation in which we have a strong magnetic field to a situation in which we have no magnetic field. And this is going to happen in some time period, delta t. And the faster this happens, the greater the induced EMF is going to be in our patient. And what we want to try to do is mitigate this induced EMF to prevent currents from flowing in the patient's body. So what we're going to do is try to figure out what time period we'll need to bring down our magnetic field in order to keep our induced EMF in the patient's body at or below 0.010 volts. So to do this, we're going to assume that the largest surface in the patient's body that magnetic flux is passing through is 0.032 meters squared, which is maybe their chest or something like I drew here. And the field parallel to the normal of that surface is 1.5 teslas. So if we recall Faraday's law of induction, it states that the induced EMF through a surface is just going to be minus the change in the flux through that surface over the change in time. And the change in flux for us is just going to be the final flux minus the initial flux. Where the magnetic flux is usually written for a uniform constant magnetic field as B times A times the cosine of the angle between the magnetic field and the surface normal. But in our case, that angle is 0, and the cosine of 0 is 1. So we just have B times A. So our final flux is just going to be 0 because our magnetic field will go to 0. So I should say that B final be 0. And this implies that the final flux will be 0. But the initial flux will not be 0. So let's see what that is. So the initial flux is just going to be the initial B field times the area. And our initial B field is just going to be this B parallel that I had up at the top here, which is 1.5 teslas. So if we substitute that into our delta flux here, we'll just end up with minus B parallel times A, since the final flux was 0. Okay, and if we substitute that into our equation for the induced EMF, we will just have minus a minus B times A over the change in time. So our minus signs will cancel out. And now we're just going to solve this equation for delta t. So I'll multiply both sides by delta t. Delta t times E equals B times A. And then I will divide both sides by E, the induced EMF. All right. So this is if we solved this right now by using E equals 0.010 volts, we'd be finding the time required to reduce our field to 0 that would generate an induced EMF of 0.01 volts. And if we want it to be any less than that, equal or any less, we want to make sure that this delta t isn't any faster. So really what we want to say here is that delta t is going to be greater than, or equal to this value here, because we don't want it to be any quicker. And if we plug in our numbers there, we'll get that delta t should be greater than 4.8 seconds. So there you have it. We want to shut off our MRI in at least 4.8 seconds, if not more, just to be safe, in order to keep the induced EMF in our patient's body here from going over 0.010 volts.